Hi everyone, I'm Rabia and I'm joining you today on this Teaching English live event from Pakistan. And with me, I have. Hi Stephen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can. Nice to see you, Rabia.
Same here, same here. I was saying that we are here today on a Teaching English live event. Welcome, all of you. And today we'll be talking about our course that is Teaching English in Primary. And we'll be deep diving into the topic that is helping learners think in primary classes. So we had a vote from all of you, and all of you were the ones who said that we should deep dive into this topic. So this is what we are here for today, and we'll be talking in detail about that. So, Stephen, what do you think? What do we mean by thinking in a young learner's classroom?
I think it can mean different things. I think it can mean time for thinking, basically, in a kind of basic sense. Um, but one way we think about thinking skills is obviously different types of thinking skills. So um, usually they're divided into two. So there is the lower order thinking skills um, and the higher order thinking skills. And obviously, in a young learner classroom, maybe there are some thinking skills that we can't focus on as much because of their development and their brain development. Um, but we can definitely focus on both lower order thinking skills, so lots, and higher order thinking skills, HOTS. So we can focus on things like remembering, repeating, which are kind of lower order ones, but also kind of comparing, reasoning, and definitely imagination. You can work on imagination a lot in primary classrooms. Um, so, I mean, yeah, that's what I'd probably say. And I mean, what do you think, Rabia? I mean, from my experience, I've probably done more lower order thinking skills because I know that they can engage the learners a lot more, especially because they get the feeling that they're getting things right. Um, but how about you? What kind of thinking? Like if we think about the younger ones, like 5 or 6 years old, what can they focus on?
I think as adults we have like two kinds of thinking process. One, we think that the learners are just young adults and they behave exactly as we do. Their thinking process would be exactly like ours, and then we don't. We other on the other part we think that they don't understand anything. They will not be able to do this because they're young, they can't think. So we need to strike a balance. We need to think about, and also there is something when we are teaching young learners, we need to balance the concept that we want them to think about. So the conceptual knowledge and the cognitive development, both of them go hand in hand. So if we can deliver a concept in a way that they understand it, I think we can develop uh, the thinking in the classroom uh, with all of the levels that you have said. And there is also one other argument about which is better. Hots is better or lots is better? Which one should we use in the primary classrooms? Should it be only lower order thinking skills or should it be the higher order thinking skills? What do you think?
Well, I think it's easier for us to focus on lower order thinking skills. And to a certain extent, things like remembering are very important. And we need to focus on those kind of basic thinking skills before moving on to the kind of more difficult ones around imagination and analysis and things like that. So I think you can't have one without the other. And I know sometimes as teachers we get excited about higher order thinking skills because it sounds more interesting and like you can kind of
Sophisticated also.
yes exactly
Think they're
um,
doing something meaningful.
yeah exactly but without doing things like being able to remember what things are you can't do those skills, so it's important that you give due attention to both, I think.
Yeah. So
um, so
I'll
which
just
which ones sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I thought that I'll share some examples of what we can do. How can we
Mm.
involve young learners in all of these levels? So if we have just read a story, or if they're very young learners, they've heard a story. The first thing maybe is remembering. You can say what you know, what happened in the story. So
Mhm.
that is the first stage of remembering. And you move on to then ask them to, why did that happen? And they'll describe, this is why it happened. And then you ask them to, okay, what would you do if it happened to you? So they're putting the same information into another context. You're asking them to analyze what would they do. And no, sorry, it's apply. You ask them to apply it in other context, and then analyze, what did they like about it, what did they not like about it. And sometimes analyzing and apply, analyzing and evaluating get a little bit complicated,
Mhm.
because we think that we are uh, evaluating the same thing, we're analyzing the same thing, what's the difference? So for analyzing, it's just what your opinion is also there. But for evaluating, it's the reasoning, more of the reasoning is involved. And a lot of times teachers make mistake of asking learners to jump into creating things without maybe asking them to go through all of these levels. So it's important that we remember how we develop those skills, how we stage the development. Sometimes we can skip some of the lots, sometimes we don't hit all of the hearts, but having a balance is very important. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's a very good point to make about kind of like the scaffolding of the lesson, but also the skills that you're focusing on in the lesson. So, like for example, if you're teaching transport, for example, it's very important to get them to identify them before you start analysing if the which is the most polluting and something like that. But I mean, one thing to also consider, obviously, is your learners themselves. So if they've identified them in previous lessons and you know that they're comfortable with transport, then you don't necessarily need to spend as long on the lower order thinking skills. You can kind of move more quickly into the higher order skills. I think one thing as well is we were talking about this before about um, developing the skills. And sometimes, I mean, I know I've been guilty of this in the past. Is that sometimes when we're teaching primary learners, we want to keep them busy, so we're constantly giving them a new activity to do. It's like this is a remembering task. Now we do a describing task. Now we do, and then it's just kind of keeping it going because we don't want them to get distracted. We don't want them to kind of get bored. um, but I think it's important when we're staging those activities, and obviously a high turnover of activities is necessary with younger learners, but kind of making sure that we're doing a mix so that there is maybe some kind of active game, but then a thinking game.
Yes.
It's kind of stirrers and settlers, that kind of classic
Yeah.
thing I think is very important.
Yeah.
Um,
And the difference between engaging them into questions and making them think, that is also very important. We
mhm,
can't just ask them questions which do not develop their thinking at all. It's just like, do you understand, or yes, and you think that is engagement, you involve the learners.
mhm,
You If you want to involve the learners, give them something to think. And when you're giving them something to think, maybe giving them time to think and
mhm,
respond is also very important. I think these are the two things I'd say are very, very important. And something which you were saying was also like, we don't play table tennis with the young. You throw a question, they throw back the answer. Don't do it like that. And maybe play it like a basketball. You give the ball to them, and they have a goal, and they have a target, and they work together, think about what they'll do, develop a strategy, and reach their goal. So
mhm.
maybe giving them the responsibility of thinking how they'll do things is also very important.
Yeah, and preparation time,
Yes.
giving preparation time for activities is super important. Okay, we've got a lot of people with us today from Mauritius, from Spain, from Taiwan, some other countries as well, Kazakhstan. So, welcome everybody. It's nice to see all of you. As Rabia mentioned before, we're talking about thinking skills with primary learners, which is something in the community that everybody wanted, well, most people wanted to be discussed. Um, there's an interesting question actually from Maria Fernanda Talavera Carrero. She said, "Can storytelling help thinking?" What do you think, Rabia?
I just gave an example of how we can build thinking skills, like all stages of thinking skills, with the help of storytelling. And the way we grew up was all of us would read a story, take turns, and then the teacher would write the questions on the board, and the
Mhm.
answers we'll copy, and we'll memorize and write the answers. But when you're telling a story, you should not, I would say, leave all of the questions till the end. Keep on asking those questions. Maybe, for instance, if this is part of a story, this image is there, so I can ask them, okay, Stephen, what happened before this picture? It could be a recall, maybe you have already read that, so you can easily tell me. What happened now is also maybe you've read. What do you think will happen next?
Mhm.
That kind of excitement. Now you've started thinking, okay, maybe he went to the school and when he came back there was no bird, but then there is no door to this cage. How would have that bird gone? It was my mistake, I didn't draw it, but still.
But it's fine. It's good. But
Yeah,
the primary students will notice that, and they
yeah,
will comment on that. And I think, I mean, that introduces things like predicting and speculating, which are really helpful thinking skills for learners, so that they can think what's going to happen next in a
yeah.
story, what's going to happen next
And it
in an
could be on its
activity.
own an activity also. Like you put this flashcard and you ask them to develop a story on this. It could be a
Yes.
new story from this image, and then they start thinking about who is this boy, how old is he, where is he coming from, what animal was in there. So
Mhm.
you expose them to a new world of imagination.
Yeah,
So
I'd really like to hear from everybody watching. Actually, what did happen? Why is the boy surprised?
yeah,
And why is there no door? But yeah. Okay, so obviously, just then you introduced a kind of a flashcard, which is a tool that we can use for developing thinking skills. And obviously that one helps with different types, and it obviously helps with exposure to different language as well. So flashcards are something that we use a lot in class, but maybe we don't necessarily always use it for thinking skills.
yeah.
Um, so,
One of our community members gave us a very good idea.
okay.
They said that using image based flashcards to promote critical thinking helps learners analyze visual prompts, which you just made them do,
Hmm.
identify problems, and suggest solutions. This
Hmm.
method enhances observation, reasoning, and creativity, making learning interactive while connecting classroom content to real world issues and solutions. So,
Hmm.
what do you think about this? I really like this.
No, no, definitely. I think because the kind of problem, like thinking of problems and solutions and kind of making it creative, because that's, I mean, the task that you just shared with the birdcage, that can definitely be done with primary learners, and they can think of ways to solve that situation, find the bird, and create a story. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. But obviously, we can use flashcards for other kind of skills as well. Like, for example, with categorizing, there was a community member who mentioned about one way you can do it. Like, for example, with transport, we mentioned before, um, you can ask them to categorize based on the collocation. So, like, maybe get on, get in, take off, get off, and then they can see which words match. And that's a nice simple language categorizing task. But it also gets them thinking, because sometimes maybe we think there's one correct answer, but sometimes there might be more, and getting them to think how maybe one thing can go in different categories.
Exactly, exactly. Um, we have another comment from a community member, and they're saying activating prior knowledge, KWL charts. These are brainstorming, anticipation guides. I think all of these are going to help the learners a lot with that. We have another question: how do you incorporate technology to develop speaking skills among young learners? We have a whole live session next week on this
Mhm.
topic, and we're going to touch upon how can we develop speaking skills. But again, giving them something to think about, and like Stephen said, a preparation time. You can ask them to speak about, instead of writing about this, they can speak about it, they can discuss with their partner, and then maybe tell the whole class what story did they think about. So I think with young learners we need to give them something to talk about, something interesting,
Hmm.
and giving them time to prepare.
Hmm. Yeah, and the prepare is part of this, the thinking time. Um, so yeah, so if you're thinking about obviously kind of talking about that a little bit more, like we talked about obviously
Hmm.
changing tasks a little bit to make sure that they include thinking time. So are there any other ways that we can regularly build thinking into everyday lessons, Rabia? What do you think?
I think it's very important to ask them questions,
Hmm.
and look for the answers, and build on these answers. Okay, if I asked you something and you said this, and I'll say, okay, Philippa, what do you think about what Steven said? And in this way you engage. Like I said, play basketball instead of table tennis. It should not be with you. So give them thinking questions. I think that that's really important. And using stories and pictures to ask what would happen next, like we did, what happened earlier, is very important. And you don't need to have, okay, today I'm going to develop their thinking skills in a separate lesson. It should be included within your lesson plans. And sometimes it's not easy to think of the questions right at the moment, just like concept check questions. I forget, oh, and I start thinking what would be the right way. So maybe writing them into your lesson plan, or maybe just writing a post-it note on a worksheet that these are the questions I'm going to ask.
Hmm.
And instead of asking questions like what is this, what else is like this. For instance, if I say what is this, they'll say it's a cat, and I'll say, okay, what else could be like this? And so answer me, Stephen, what else could be like this?
A tiger.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
again, when I say this, why do you think so? What's similar? Now
because
you start
they're
thinking.
both from the cat family. But yeah, yeah, no, that's a nice
Yeah.
activity, and also with younger learners, you can guide them a little bit with that. So maybe they don't know, they can't do it exactly, but then you can say, okay, look, how many legs does it have? What other animals have four legs, and kind of
Yeah.
help them in that way.
Yeah. And when I ask you what is this, and you'll say it's a
It's a
it's
dog.
it's a dog, and then I'll say, how do you know it's a dog?
Um,
And you started thinking about how you're going to prove it that it's a dog. So
mhm,
a very simple shift into from what it is into why do you think it is. So the
mm,
thinking process will start. So I think this is how, why do you think that, how do you decide that, that builds reasoning, and then the skills of explaining as well. So I
mhm.
think these are some of the ways with questions we can build regular, in our regular lessons we can build thinking. So the ones who are here with us, how do you build thinking into your regular lessons? Please share with us if you have any ideas. We'd love to hear more from you.
Yeah, but I think you've just shared a couple of flashcards, so we were going to look at how we can use them a little bit more, weren't we, for different thinking skills.
Okay.
So
Okay. We
I'm going to be the primary student, and
okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, now that I understand, like we've already built this
mhm.
concept, that this is a, can you say what it is?
Car, dog, sideways cat. Oh, cat.
Okay. So which one is the odd one out?
Car,
Car. And if I say why?
because it's a transport. The others are animals.
Okay. What's similar between all of these?
Ooh, they all move.
Okay, good, good. So this way, instead of just recognition, what we are doing is making them think about, comparing what's similar, what's different. So
Mhm,
we are developing their analyzing skills, somewhat evaluating skills as well. And if I say, which one of these do you like?
mhm. Cat. No, I don't like cats. Dogs.
See, you started thinking about what you like and what you
Mhm,
don't. So
mhm,
this is how we engage them with things like, um, simple. And I made these last night. They're
Hmm.
not even difficult to make. This was a box that I cut. This is an extra piece of chart paper that I drew, and I made a flashcard. Just do one thing. The sharp edges, just cut them off. Otherwise, you can damage yourself. It's very easy to make flashcards. Your learners can even make a flashcard. You can ask them, to make simple, maybe stick figures of characters in a story, and then you say, who was the funniest one? And they'll raise, and it could be different. And when you ask a question and you say, okay, one person at a time, but with
Hmm.
flashcards everybody can show their flashcards, so
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
quick, more involvement like that. So do you
Mhm.
have any idea for us, Steven?
I've got a couple of ideas that might work. So, for example, let me turn it down. Can you see all the images here?
Yes.
So, obviously, a classic kind of activity, a kind of lower order activity, is asking the students to identify what these images are. Um, Rabi, yeah, can you put these pictures into two groups?
Okay, so I can put them into food
Hmm.
and animals.
Okay, so now can you put them into three groups?
Some are black and white and some are colored.
Okay, that's only two, so you need another one.
Oh no, I have to do three. uh they're fruits,
Hmm.
and they're marine animals, and they're land animals.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So you obviously we can get our learners to categorize them into simple categories too, but obviously extending that to three gets them to think about these objects in a different way. Also, it's a nice idea not to actually guide them. So don't say put them into food and animals. Although you could do that because, for example, like maybe this is a tuna fish, like that could be in both. So another thing to do is obviously to give them three categories like food, both animals, or you
Yeah,
can ask them to decide
I've
decide them.
started thinking. I've started thinking.
Exactly. Obviously, I mean, another activity you could do with this, which is maybe a little bit creative, is a kind of would you rather.
Hmm.
So, would you rather be a fruit or a fish, and get them to kind of justify it? And students, I mean, I've done that with primaries before, like in kind of like, would you rather be a dinosaur or a robot or something like that? And that gets them thinking and kind of thinking about why they would choose that and what's better about being a fruit than being a fish. One other last activity, just quickly. So, for example, I will take away this picture. So what you could do, obviously, is ask your students to close their eyes and take away the picture. I forgot to do that, so I was a bad teacher. Um, okay, so which one did I remove?
You remove the tuna.
Okay, so that's a remembering task. But then the next question is obviously why? Why did I take away the tuna?
um, because um, a fish can eat something else also.
Okay, that's a good reason. Like it doesn't have to be like there doesn't have to be a right answer. And that's another thing that you've got to encourage with primary learners is that there aren't always right answers for everything. My daughter in particular very much likes a right answer, so I'm trying to encourage her to think in different ways. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think within the classroom, that should be all right to give wrong answers also.
Mm.
Should accept it that, it's okay to give a wrong answer, should not be afraid of giving a wrong answer. You should be open, and share things like openly. And there's one more idea before we move on, is about giving your learners a variety of objects. Maybe there's a set of balloons, and then there is a girl, and there is a sun, and maybe ask them to write a story. And you can also ask them to maybe don't color these, maybe
Mhm.
ask them to put the colors themselves, and they can then start to write a story about this girl, where's she coming from. Maybe she's running after these balloons, or somebody gave them to her, and then what happened with the sun. Maybe they got heated, and what happened to her then. So all of these, have some questions. And with questions, I think something very important is, a lot of people think that with yes and no questions. They are so quick. We're not giving them an opportunity to think. And with open-ended questions, we were giving them opportunity to think and expand. What do you think? What kind of questions should we ask our learners to develop thinking?
I think both, because they develop different types of thought. Like obviously, open-ended questions get them to think of different things. Whereas, I mean, you still need to ask them to be able to identify things or tell the difference between things. So, like for example, like with the cats and dogs you had earlier, how many legs does a cat have? That's still a useful question to ask. Um, there was another activity you showed me earlier actually before we started about like ordering as well. That's a useful thing to do. Don't you have that?
So you can have all of these cards and
Hmm.
you give them, okay, put them in the right order, which comes first. These are the stages of how a
Hmm.
plant develops from a seed into, and you can also, like you did, skip one stage, put them on the board and say which stage is missing, and they'll start thinking about it. Okay, it's not just about recall. And you
Hmm.
can give them flashcards of a story as well, and they put the events in order they have heard, and from there, and then you say, okay, now if this happened after this, and there is no ending, you ask them, okay, now create an ending. So this way, it's not just remembering and recalling, they are creating by themselves as well.
Yeah, and I think adding like a stage as well is something they can do.
Yeah,
Like, what could we put between these two stages,
exactly.
and kind of getting them to understand steps, I think is a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah, and I think something really, really important here as teachers is to remember that all of the children will not remember at the same level. Their cognitive development is also not at the same level. So you
Mhm.
need to maybe scaffold at some times. For instance, if they don't, they're unable to think on their own. You add a sentence start as I think, you say, okay, I think, continue from there,
Mhm.
give them something to build on. And if they can't write, still, if they're like a couple of learners who have just joined you, you can ask them to maybe say it out loud instead of just writing it like others are doing, putting their thoughts on the paper. They can say it as well. So including everyone within the primary learners, accepting that they are different is also very important.
Yeah, and I think scaffolding the like the speaking you were talking about just then, like especially with things like I think. So let's say we've got these images again. Like if we have like on the board next to them, you can have some kind of procedural language to help them talk about it. So I think dot 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 because dot dot dot, and you could even give them options to choose from. I think like a horse is food because my dad eats horse or something like that. I don't know. Um, but yeah, there was one question actually in the chat, Rabia, which I thought was a really useful question. Was are there any efficient methods to make flashcards?
Yes, there is a website from where you can. I'll share the link
Hmm.
when this live ends. So it's free. It has certain images, and you can put the words. You can have two flashcards on one page, a smaller one, or even a one image on the full page as well. That could be, or simply you can draw, like I've drawn these.
Hmm.
And it took me like 30 minutes, not more than that. Coloring took more. You can ask one of your students to color it for you also. They would love to do that. You can ask them to prepare flashcards also. It could be a
I mean,
teamwork.
another way to do it as well is to have like blank A4 pages on the board, and then you start drawing it, and then from drawing it, you elicit the word, and then you're kind of making the flashcard in the lesson as you're introducing
Yeah.
the words of the lesson. And then once you've got them, then you've got them there, and then you can use them in different activities after that.
Yes, and just one last reminder before we leave is that share whatever resources you have made. Always
Mhm.
give it to other teachers, and you can borrow from them as well. Have a resource center within your school or your staff room where you put the flashcards or the resources so that you build a community where you learn from each other and you share different resources with each other. So with this, we end our deep dive about developing thinking skills in the primary learners. I hope you have taken some ideas. Please, even if the session ends, you can use the chat to share your ideas with us, and we'll be responding to all of the comments there. So thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us, and for all of you. Next week, we'll be talking about all the challenges that you face in the classroom with speaking skills. And instead of Wednesday, we'll be meeting you on Thursday. So till then, join our courses, download the workbook, and keep on commenting in the community. We
Yeah.
love to hear from you. Thank
Yeah.
you so
Thank you
much.
everyone for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
How to find and join groups for teachers. From our Teaching English page on Facebook, tap About. Go down the page until you see Groups. Then tap See All. Tap the name of a group to learn more about it. You must ask to join private groups before you can access them. Read carefully and provide any requested information. Read the group rules. Confirm that you agree to them. Then tap Submit. Popular posts from your groups will appear in your newsfeed. Tap on the name of a group to go there. Or access all your groups by tapping on your profile. Groups. Then choose which group to explore.